Real quick before this episode starts, this episode is a late night episode, and there's a reason we don't do those. Anyways, in the episode I said it's episode 5, but it's actually episode 6. So I'm not really sure how qualified I am to talk about quadratics when I can't even count to 6. But with that in mind, let's get into it. Welcome to a late night episode of MS Portfolio. This is part 5 covering quadratics. First up, quadratics have a number of different forms. This is the standard quadratic form right up here, which can then be converted into our factored form that we use to find our x-intercepts or roots, which we do simply by looking at our factored form and realizing that one of these two terms has to equal 0, so we know that x is either equal to -4 or equal to -2. For our vertex or standard form, we have to take half of our b, or the coefficient of x in the second term, and square it. So we have 6 over 2 in brackets squared. We're adding that and also subtracting it. And the reason that we do that is so that with these three terms, we can complete the square. In this case, it is x plus 3 in brackets squared minus 1 because we have plus 8 minus 9. Now what that gives us is our vertex, which you can see here are the same numbers you see here. It's right there, just waiting for us. Next, I want to go over the quadratic formula super quickly. This is the standard ax squared plus bx plus c quadratic form that we see in most places, and it's the most familiar form that we have. All you have to do is plug in your variables, your a, your b, and your c, to the quadratic formula, which is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. We just plug our stuff in, and it will give us our answer of -3 plus or minus the square root of 3 all over 2. And we just have to simplify using our handy rationals. And also simple factoring, as you see between these two terms. It's just divided by 2. Next, we have these linear equations to look at. So here we have x squared minus y plus 4 equals 0, and also y equals 4x. What we can do with this is we can sub out our y for our 4x, which gives us x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 0, which can then be completed. You can complete the square to x minus 2 in brackets squared minus or equals 0, which tells us that x is equal to 2, which we can then sub back into our y equals 4x to give us y equals 8 and a point, which is 2, 8. We have something very similar over here with y plus 3x equals 0 and x squared plus y squared equals 10. Here we'll change our first top equation there, y equals -3x, which we can then sub in as our y to the second equation, making x squared plus bracket 3x bracket squared minus 10 equals 0, which equals 10x squared minus 10 equals 0, which tells us that 10x squared equals 10, which tells us that x squared equals 1, which then itself tells us that x is equal to positive or -1. And with those two numbers for x, we sub them back into our first equation, which then gives us two different points here of -1, 3 and 1, -3. Lastly, we will figure out how to find the equation of a quadratic using its vertex and the point it passes through, or a point it passes through. For this, we just use our standard vertex form, our standard form that we saw at the beginning, and we sub in our vertex points for the h and k, and then we do the same for our random point with our x and y values. Of course, f of x is equal to y, so you can sub your y value of 6 in to the front of this side right here. And from there, we're just solving for a, and then we're plugging a back into our vertex form, and then putting it back into quadratic form to find our equation. I believe that this is all the information that you will need. And although some questions may be in a different type of form or format, that using these basics that you can figure them out, and with these fundamentals that no matter how it's worded, you should still be able to figure it out.